There we go. Nice. Okay, so once again, my name is Mike Rogers, and what I want to do on this channel is to start with, from 8 to 9. I'm a little late tonight, but from 8 to 9 each night, what we're going to do is provide you a time where you can set aside, listen to me and watch videos, or just write. What we do is we watch YouTube videos on screenwriting. So it's basically set up so that you can, um, give yourself to give yourself that hour to write each night. But you can also watch the videos too. So let's go to your channel. Let's see if we can find our playlists. And this ABBA video is insane. Did you know there were 2 women in ABBA? When you think of ABBA, you think of one blonde woman. There were 2 women in ABBA. So 26 videos. That's what we want. We're not gonna watch it. We're not gonna watch the ABBA one. It's good stuff, though, I'll tell you. So we watched the Gone Girl video in the last live stream we did. We did the Gone Girl video, Seth Rogen, How to Write Dialogue with Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin answers screenwriting questions. No BS advice if anybody wants to be a screenwriter. Hollywood screenwriter tries to write a scene in 7 minutes. This actually was the last thing I played, and I didn't explain it to you. And what it was is the TV's Best Scene reading for 2020 AD by Mike Rogers. It's a scene I wrote that won the Wild Sound Festival for Best TV Scene. And I listened to it, and it goes right up my ass. Excuse my French, because I don't like it. It's way too wordy. It's not well written. It's well written. It sounds good, but it's not well written for a screenplay. It sounds more like you're reading a novel than a screenplay. Way too wordy. The Kringler Show, Virginia wins. Okay, that's not what we want. State of F1 sports. Okay, so these are not the. Well, let's just do it this way then.
Must be funny in the rich man's world. Monday, Monday.
So oddly enough, people think of writing as dialogue, and to me, writing is structure. Dialogue is the cherry on top. The cherry on top does not support the ice cream sundae. It's a delicious little added thing, but the real storytelling, the real structuring, that to me is
This is the brave.
the hard part of writing, building the scaffolding, the skeleton of the story, if you will.
For a long time, I tried to think out.
Are you kidding me? Let's just do this. Let's just pause. Why don't you get all downloaded? Are you joking?
As dialogue, and to me, writing is structure. Dialogue is the cherry on top.
Blurry.
The cherry on top does not support the ice cream. So oddly enough, people think of writing as dialogue, and to me, writing is structure. Dialogue is the cherry on top. The cherry on top does not support the ice cream sundae. It's a delicious little added thing, but the real storytelling, the real structuring, that to me is the hard part of writing, building the scaffolding, the skeleton of the story, if you will.
For a long time, I tried to think out everything, and
I love I loved that show. Breaking Bad, it was brilliant, but Vince Gilligan, there's something about him just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know what it is.
The story, even though I know things would completely change as I go on. However, now I've realized that it doesn't do me much good to think too much past the middle. I mean, I might know where I want to go. I mean, I write genre pieces, so you have an idea what the third act's going to be, and Kill Bill. I guess she'll probably kill Bill at the end. But, a genre movie, you think you know where you're going, and you're probably right, and you have an idea of how you might want the ending to end as for both a movie and for an audience. But for the most part, you can kind of work out more or less what's going to get you to the middle. But to think beyond that is kind of silly, because by the time you get to the middle when you've actually been writing it, well, it's a different story now. It's a different thing now. Now you are the characters. You know the characters. Things that you could never have known before you started writing are now, they're in your blood.
There's a lot of things in writing that just happen.
It's like this.
That just, have no explanation. Like the only reason it turned out the way that it turned out is because you wrote it. Is because it was the act of writing it. So, you can plan all you want. People will say that they'll plan out books for, and then they'll sit down and write it. I don't know how you do that, because the characters in the story are going to want to. They're going to want to go their own way. Even if you don't like the way they go, they're going to want to go their own way. It's going to want to lay itself out in a certain way, and you're going to try to bend it to go different ways.
This entire, there is a mythology to my movies to some degree or another. And that mythology is delivered as I write. And I might have a checklist of things that I might want to do during the course of the time, but some of them, become irrelevant as you go on. And when other ones take their place, and some things that you thought could have been a big deal, well, they are a big deal. And some things maybe half the reason you wanted to write it, by the time you get to where that would happen, it's for something else. It's not for this. But by the time you get to the middle, that's where you want to be. You want to be this expert. You want to be in the middle of the story. You want to know who these people are. And now, with all this knowledge, now you figure out where you want to go for the second half. I'm trying to write to that spot where I don't know what's going to happen. I'm trying to get to that. I'm trying to get off that blueprint. And I'm trying to get to that place where now the characters are telling me and the characters are exciting me.
I would be being disingenuous with you to say that I kind of can construct a story. I mean, I never feel like I know how to construct the story, except just like, that's a great way, what you just said, like, dumping things on a table and like spreading them around like that, for sure, and hopefully getting lucky enough to kind of get enough things going in a row that feels like something worth doing, something worth telling, something worth going to shoot.
I open up a final draft, and I write about a page of story beats, which would be single lines. So, spaceship on the way to the sun, 7 characters or 8, or I can't even remember how many there are. So it goes on. And just single lines. And the lines are the basic beats of the story. And when I've got to the end, I sort of take the cursor up to the top of the page. So I've got about a page of lines. I take the cursor back up to the top of the page, and I write the first scene. And as I reach story beats, I delete them. So eventually, the script is getting longer, and the story beats list, which is only a page, is getting shorter. Eventually, I delete the last line, and at that point, I've got a full script, and that's it. So that's a first draft, and it will be crap. But that's okay, because I know that there's a couple of things I get from that. One is you've got something to work with, and it's getting to that point that's often the hardest bit.
You read something, I can't remember who the quote is from, that enormous does, enormous does? That influence?
Yes.
That enormous does influence.
See, that's an example of creative some sort of syntax.
That enormous does influence Lee. Somebody said that if the author doesn't know where the story is going, the audience can't possibly know.
I write really structurally. I have to start. I I spend this the first big chunk of time just working in little notebooks, and all I do is I draw like arcs and split them out into like sequences. I need to basically be able to see the whole plot in my head before I can sit down and actually start writing, or I'll get lost in the weeds. So I plan and plan and plan and plan, and this was like that, only more so. This was even more crucial for me to have the whole thing mapped out. But then you actually get into it, and as you guys who are writers, you know, you get into it, and no matter how much you plan, you know, it's like you plan out your map through the forest, looking at like the map in your cozy living room, and then you get in there and you're actually hacking through the forest, and you figure out stuff doesn't work, and you figure out new paths, and so yeah, it's kind of a mixture, I guess.
I don't outline. I mean, I say that. I definitely don't outline before I start writing. There is a moment when I do outline, but it's only after I have a great deal of material. I find when I outline before I write, it's the fastest way to kill all my ideas. I can't. Somehow it makes everything quite literal for me.
I've never outlined before. I use index cards. It just kind of organizes my mind. I've never index carded the whole movie because I don't think I've ever, at the point when I've started writing a screenplay, known everything that there is to know about the whole movie. I've figured out how it's going to start, and I have some other things along the way. But it's kind of like walking in the dark with a flashlight. You can really only see as far ahead of you as the light goes.
I think rules are great if you're in trouble, and if you're not in any trouble with what you're writing, they're absolutely useless and possibly worse than useless. It may happen that every script has the characters established by page 10, and it may not. I don't think there's any reason to be thinking about that when you're trying to write a script. And it may be that every successful script has a reversal and half 2/3 of the way through, and another one 1/3 of the way through. I don't know. It's not really. I don't see what you're gonna. I don't think that kind of. I think that kind of thing. I think every time I read a script and it goes off, it's because at that point the script is trying to be like a script, and it's not. And it's at that exact moment when it loses its individuality and its interest.
I mean, what I do is I do a very detailed step outline of the story, and then you break it down to like all the scenes that need to be there. I go and I put in all the scene settings of every scene, so I know where you are and at what time. You know, and actually, it's good to figure out the rhythm of day and night in movies. I mean, Little Miss Sunshine is 3 days. Most films are like a few days, and you want this rhythm between day and night. You don't want to be cutting from day to day. You know, from one day to the next day. You want to be moving up and down. And so I'll go through and just do all the log lines, or not log lines, all the scene lines, slug lines, and just put them in. And you can even see at that point if there's an action sequence that's too long, or if there's something that there could be another scene in here. And once you got your 50 slug lines or whatever they are, your 50 scenes, then you just can go ahead and put your dialogue into them. And what I've started doing at Pixar now is doing what I call a sequence outline, which is you break the film down into 15 or 20 sequences. And I do it on 4 pieces of paper. So I do the first act on 1 piece of paper, which is the title of the sequence and then what happens in it. And usually you have 5 or 6 sequences in your first act, and then the second page is the second quarter of the film, which will take you to your midpoint. The third page is the third quarter, and then the last page. And then you have your whole film is on 4 pages, but it breaks down it by act, basically. You know, you get to the end of the first page, you get to the end of the first act, and you can just look at stuff, and because it's broken down by sequence, you can figure out, this right here can go over here. You're able to visually see the whole film, and I find that really helpful in terms of moving stuff around. But with index cards, I always feel like it's just too much. It's just clutter everywhere, on the floor of your apartment, and it's better to just be able to put 4 sheets of paper in front of you and figure out why something isn't working or not. I'm such a strong believer in knowing where you're going before you start out, that hopefully once you've, and inevitably things change, I mean, that's what things change, but hopefully you'll at least get to the end of your first draft.
I wonder. sort of a random question, but I kind of just want 40 to 60, so 50 is right. So when you're watching a movie, every sequence of action or dialogue, known as a scene, is a building block of a story's architecture. The number of scenes can vary greatly. In a common brief and standard screenplay averaging 110 to 120 pages, with each page traditionally equating to a minute of scene time, this would suggest that the movie typically comprises of anywhere to 40 to 60 scenes, but that is a rough estimate. But a nice little indicator, because he said 50 scenes. His sequences, he had 24 sequences. 24 sequences, 50 scenes. So 50 slug lines. I don't know. I don't know if I can do it like that.
With a
We're doing it now, baby. No, you're fine. Just doing it till 9.
semblance of what you started out trying to do.
It's a big deal for me. I can usually look at an outline, which is usually about, it's like it'll just have scene headings, and, her in her office or something like that, where she realizes this or gets the first message or whatever it is, and that will go for about 3 pages, of that, and I can usually start to see the rhythms and see what's wrong with the piece, and what needs to be thought more about.
We would sit in front of a cork board 3 feet by 5 feet with a big thing of thumbtacks and a big thing of index cards and a whole bunch of Sharpie magic markers. And we'd sit there and we'd say, okay, what's the teaser? And you build it brick by brick. Each card represents a plot beat. Not necessarily a scene, but 3 or 4, 6, 8 cards might represent one scene. And by the end of it, you filled up this entire 3 foot by 5 foot cork board with a teaser and the 4-act structure, sitting there together or alone. Alone is much harder still. And figuring out each plot beat is essentially the good analogy, I suppose, is a bunch of engineers sitting around on their drafting tables or their communal drafting table and drawing the design, drawing the architectural drawings for a skyscraper. Then you got to go build a skyscraper, which is a huge amount of man hour and labor and all of that. But you can't build that skyscraper unless you got the architectural blueprints to begin with. And to us, the actual sitting down and writing, it's kind of carefree compared to the breaking, because I've got this outline. I've got these index cards, and I know, what happens next. So the writing is an important part of it, but it's not the hardest part, and it's not, to me, the most crucial part.
Behind the curtain, you're gonna like that and subscribe because that was good. Let's see this one here. Trying to build a little database of these.
As a writer, I am almost always in a state of writer's block. It's not an occasional thing for me. What's occasional is when I'm able to write.
Ambient hour. I don't think I've ever listened. And this is 3 days ago. That's good.
We're here. Coffee, cigars, movies.
We'll have to see if this is ambient hour or ambient hour. This starting, it doesn't really look too promising.
That's the intro now. There you go. That's
Coffee, cigars, movies.
Coffee, cigars, movies.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about
Oh, these cigars are so good.
two direct.
Yeah, let's stay on the outline. Oh, this is the...
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Scripted or Pro. Taking the time on the front end to create a script outline can save you from months of rewrites down the road. Today, we're going to dive into exactly how to write a screenplay outline. An outline that's going to help you to figure out all of your character motivations and plot points before you get to writing your script. So let's get into it. The typical process of writing a script goes something like this: coming up with a story idea, making notes, developing the script outline, and writing the script. And also, some writers like to add a screenplay treatment in there, somewhere before or after the script outline. The great thing about an outline is it's the one time you can really see the story for what it is. There's no distractions from...
Okay, so I don't think outlines are totally necessary. As you know, a lot of people don't use them. So what she's saying is, like, you come up with your story ideas, you write your outline, you do that. You could, but you don't have to. You can just come up with your idea and start writing.
From the dialogue or script formatting in the mix. It's the perfect time to see if your story really holds up. Someone listening to your script outline should be able to fully comprehend and hopefully have interest in it. Chances are, if you haven't piqued their interest with the outline, they probably aren't going to feel much differently about the screenplay. Now, there are some very famous writers who...
This seems to be approaching this from the angle that somebody, you pitched an idea to somebody. Somebody was like, "Hey, awesome! Send me an outline of the script." And they will also probably look for the other thing that she asked for. My brain just isn't working right now.
Script outline and writing the script. And also, some writers like to add a screenplay treatment in there.
Okay, treatment. So if you're trying to sell a screenplay and you pitch an idea to somebody and they like the idea, they're not going to read the entire screenplay. They're going to say, "Send me an outline of the screenplay and send me a treatment as well." And we can go over treatments later, because it's totally different and kind of a pain. This is approaching the outline as a document that you need to produce for somebody who's interested in your screenplay, not to assist you in writing your screenplay, from the way that she's talking.
Tarantino or the Coen brothers haven't piqued their interest with the outline, they probably aren't going to feel much differently about the screenplay. Now, there are some very famous writers who choose not to write an outline. Writers such as Quentin Tarantino or the Coen brothers. Judd Apatow likes to come up with an idea and roll right into the script, or what he calls the vomit pass. Then, at a later date, he goes back through and fixes it all up, a writing theory he credits to learning in an Anne Lamott book. Although it isn't at all a bad approach, that methodology is not necessarily the most prevalent among professional writers. And besides that, what works for them may not work for you. So forget what other professional writers do. You will undoubtedly find the way that suits you best. Now let's get into the process for writing screenplay outlines. The best way to learn is to practice on existing movies. As you gain practical experience from other movies, you'll be honing your understanding of story, structure, scenes, and beats. So let's jump into exactly how to do this. Step 1. Choose a movie to outline, preferably one in the genre that you like to write in. You're best off choosing a movie that was produced sometime after 1990. These movies will be easier to break down into acts, sequences, and segments. Filmmaking standards have evolved over the decades, so it's best to stay current. Step 2. Once you've got the movie that you want to outline, put it on and write a brief summary of exactly what you see in each scene. Try to keep your sentences short and write down only the essential details. That way you can keep up with the movie as it unfolds.
Good idea.
Let's check out an example from the scene in There's Something About Mary, where Ted is being interrogated by the police over the highway murders. This is what our outline of that scene would look like. At a police station, Ted is interrogated by two cops. They think he's a serial killer, but Ted thinks he's being arrested for picking up the hitchhiker. One of the cops smashes his head against the table. By the way, it's a good idea to begin the summary with a location, just as we did in this example. It helps to establish the scene. And remember, you only need to note the major beats of the scene. So a detail about how a character is dressed probably doesn't need to be written down, unless, of course, it is important to the scene. By the time you've written a summary for every scene in the movie, you should have a script outline about 3 to 5 pages long. Take a look at this script outline from The Bourne Identity. This is what your script outline should look like prior to breaking it down into acts, sequences, and segments. Super. Mediterranean Sea, 60 miles south of Marseille. Night. A storm rages. A body floats in the sea. On the ship, a group of men play cards. The body emits a light signal. A man sees the signal as the body floats to the surface. They haul the man on board. It's Jason Bourne. A man extracts bullets from Jason's back and a capsule. It contains information for a German bank. He wakes up and demands to know what he's doing. Jason doesn't know what his name is. Super. CIA, Langley, Virginia.
Oh.
Inside, Conklin is told that the mission failed.
Super means the words are on top of the screen, like when you see like Mediterranean, so CIA, Langley, Virginia, big white letters. That's what super means.
Montage. Jason stays on the boat for 2 weeks. He talks to himself in different languages. Jason tells the man he knows how to do things, but his memory is not coming back. The man gives Jason some cash. They shake hands. The outline continues through the rest of the movie in that format. Notice how each scene summary is short and succinct. No extraneous details. And also, so that you can have this script outline template as a reference for later on, we'll put a link to it down in the description below. Step 3. Now you're going to analyze the story and note the major plot points. Start by breaking the story into 3 acts. Then break the 3 acts into 7 or 8.
We've seen 3-act and 4-act structure in these two videos. The 4-act structure though is I couldn't tell when he was telling us the one guy was talking about the 50 scenes and the 24 sequences. It looked like he was talking about a 4-act structure rather than a 3-act structure. And when Vince Gilligan was talking about it, he was talking about television, and television is completely different than feature-length films as far as like how it breaks down and how it's written. It's like a completely different technical document. So yeah, just to make a note of that, there is in screenplays you're going to be talking about 3 and 4-act structure. It's kind of the same thing. It just breaks because you're still at 120 pages. It's just how you break down the story.
Sequences. And then break each sequence down into 3 segments or mini acts. Okay. Also add the major plot points along the way, as in the inciting incident, call to action, midpoint, etc. Let's look at an example from 500 Days of Incident, call to action, midpoint, acts. Step 3. Down in the description below. Step 3. Now you're going to analyze the story and note the major plot points. Start by breaking the story into 3 acts. Then break the 3 acts into 7 or 8 sequences. And then break each sequence down into 3 segments or mini acts. Also add the major plot points along the way, as in the inciting incident, call to action, midpoint, etc. Let's look at an example from 500 Days of Summer. Here's Act 1, Sequence A. Next, we'll break Sequence A into 3 mini acts. Also, note major plot points like the inciting incident and call to action as you come across them. The major plot points should be fairly easy to spot in Hollywood movies. For example, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the midpoint is when Marion is thrown into the Well of Souls with Indy and the Nazis steal the Ark. In 500 Days of Summer, the end of Act 2 is the expectations versus reality montage, in which Tom realizes Summer is engaged. If you want some additional practice, do a screenplay outline on the movie Greenberg and break it down into acts, sequences, and segments. Once you're finished, compare what you have to our screenplay outline template. We'll throw a link to that down in the description below. One of the key takeaways to leave you with is that many of the screenplays that we receive require extensive rewriting because there wasn't enough prep work done before the actual script writing began.
True.
And it's not just about saving you time in rewrites. Doing a thorough script outline can allow you to write the actual script faster than you would otherwise. Suddenly, you may be churning out 3+ scripts a year. And yes, of course, any script that you plan on sending out into the industry is still going to require a number of rewrites. But this process will at least keep you from doing more rewrites than you need to. And if you're looking for some additional help on this process, we'll leave a link to our synopsis coverage services down in the description below. There you can find options for either 3+ or 6+ pages of feedback from a professional screenwriter on your outline, synopsis, or treatment. Let a pro help you nail your story before you start committing time and resources to the script. So what's your writing process? Do you write a script outline before starting on the script? Or do you dive into the script and let your imagination dictate the story as it goes? Let us know in the comments below what your preferred method is. Well, everyone, it has been so much fun, and we have a bunch more videos for you.
It's kind of like you're either an engineer or an artist. You're either going to just start writing and seeing what happens creatively, or you're going to plan it out like you're building a bridge. I guess I'm an artist. People call me an artist. I didn't really realize that.
For you with our best screenwriting
strategy. That I approach things like an artist, I guess. It's weird.
Strategies. You can check those out on our channel right here. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on those notifications so that you don't miss out on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.
That was interesting.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Scripted or Pro.
Let's stay on the outlines. I like this woman a lot. Oh, we forgot to like and
How is
subscribe and all
screenplay
that.
structure
I gotta go
different
back
from
real quick.
outlining a
Sorry.
screenplay?
Give me 1 sec. Do 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 do. Like it. I'm gonna subscribe it. And then I'm gonna go boom boom.
How is screenplay structure different from outlining a screenplay?
Oh, I actually don't think it's different at all. Your structure should be there from the beginning. And if you're outlining from the beginning, you should be able to follow your structure there. To me, the biggest difference is, in my opinion, I look at a beat sheet like one-liners of your biggest moments. And then I look at an outline of fleshing that out so that now you know exactly what's happening in every single scene.
Good idea.
Not necessarily just those big beats, even though for some people that's all they need. But now you start to see the connecting beats that get you from the large beats to the next large beats. And then the screenplay is actually the creative part of writing out the scene. Right? So that's how I explain it to my students. Some people don't make beat sheets. Some people just make outlines. Some people don't make outlines and they just make beat sheets. And some people just write the screenplay. You have to figure out what's best for your process. In my opinion, you want to do some work before you get to that screenplay because the white page is intimidating.
Yeah.
And if you don't know where you're going, it will eat you alive, right?
I would say more to the point that. Oh, sorry.
So just
I would say more to the point that the rewrites, a well planned out screenplay, you can probably see where the issues are before you write it, so that you're not fixing the issues in rewrites. So I do see, might have to add that into. I wasn't gonna have that in the course that we're gonna be doing, but I think we're gonna have to add that. Maybe like even a week of that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to overwhelm people, and I do just want the whole purpose of the course is screenwriting for creatives. It's it's approaching it the way that I approach it. It's just writing the screenplay. It's just getting in there with your idea and writing it and seeing where it goes. But I'm glad that we did outlines tonight because I'm seeing the benefits of these, how this could hugely benefit your process.
just like with your Google Maps, you got to put in the address and know what you're following. Even if you decide, okay, I'm going to shut it off now, I kind of know where I'm going. I don't have to keep looking at my GPS. Great. Same thing for your beat sheet or your outline. So for me, I usually use the Pixar formula as my beat sheet. I love the Pixar formula. If you're looking for one, you can go Google it. Now, I've added some things to my Pixar formula for my students because there's some more emotional work I want them to do before they, get past this point. But basically, it asks you about the beat sheets, not the beat sheets, the big beats starting at Once Upon a Time. And now you have this layout of what your story is that you can post next to your computer or wherever it is you want to put it so that you always know where you're going, because as creatives we will veer off the
Let's do that
road
real quick. So
and that's how we
um it's the Pixar beat sheet, and it does start Once Upon a Time. Let's see the cat. The Pixar formula. I just want to look at not the 22 rules. I hate that. "22 Rules" is overwhelming. Pixar storytelling from an inside look, story binder. I'll have to do this next if we have time. We have 10 minutes left, so let's just get through this video.
we end up with Uncle such and such's story that never makes it back to where it's supposed to be. So if you have your outline or your beat sheet or your Pixar formula or whatever it is that you're using, you always have something to come back to go, oh yeah. Because you also have, another uncle who's like, where was I? What part was I on? Blah, 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 blah. Well, now you don't have to ask anyone. It's right here. You've written it down. You know where you're going. And because every scene is supposed to be cause and effect, what happens in this scene is because of what happened in that scene. Then looking at that beat sheet lets you know these are the scenes that I need to get to the next beat. And these are the scenes that I need to get to the next beat, because you know that the point is I need to get from A to B to C to D to E, whatever. For some people, they only need to know A, G, M, and Z, right? I need to know A through Z. So my outlines are long. My outlines can be 60 pages long if I'm writing a feature. And if it's like I did one, and I want to say it was somewhere between 30 and 50 pages long because it was a feature and it was science fiction. So there was a lot of stuff and rules that you have to figure out. And if you don't know the answers to those questions, you don't want to get to the page because then you can kind of get lost in the sauce. But some people don't need everything written out. I like it all to be written out because I also do my revising in the outline. So as I start writing the screenplay and new things do come, because the outline doesn't have to make, it's not in concrete, right? So new things do come. Oh, that's great. That's good. What you now have to realize though is that new thing is going to affect the outline, what's coming next, maybe what came before it. So now you can go back to the outline and go, okay, I got this new thing. So let me move this, copy and paste, move that around, blah, blah, blah. And now you can see what the new story looks like without having to do it in the screenplay, which takes a lot longer. Believe me, I've done it, right? So I utilize my outline throughout the entire process, which is why it's so much longer. But back to your original question, the structure is there. That's why you're outlining. Structure needs to be there. If you're outlining and there is no structure, your screenplay won't have any structure. So the outline tells you what you know and what you don't know if you're outlining correctly. I'm actually in the middle of teaching my outlining class right now. It's called Idea to Story 2.0. I have it online for people to purchase to do it at their own pace, but then I do it once a year where you get me live. And so we're now going through all of those moments because I feel that if you have an effective outline, then you will write your screenplay far more efficiently. And so I give them workbooks and worksheets that they can do throughout, that they can do with any project they're doing, but mostly so they can eventually figure out what their process is, because they all may decide, I don't need this worksheet, I don't need that, I don't need to do this outline. But if I do this thing, this is the thing that I need that helps everything to open up. So I'm just trying to help them to figure out what their process is while teaching them structure, and then hoping that they decide to do outlines forever, but they may not.
So that's kind of a go at your own pace, you said?
I have two
You have
versions of it, right?
Okay.
So the first idea of the story is go at your own pace. You get all of the videos, all of the worksheets, etc., and you can just watch them on your own and figure it out as you go. And if you have any questions, then you can sign up for kind of like an office hour thing with me, and then I'll kind of talk you through your homework. If you sign up for the live version, which I only do once a year, then we spend 2 or 3 hours of lecture every week, and then 45 minutes to an hour of just one-on-one talking about your story. Because
So the way I want to structure the class that we're going to be doing is it's going to be 3 days a week, 3 hours a session, and it's going to be mostly lecture. And well, it's in the beginning it's going to be lecture, but what it basically is going to take most of that time is going through what people have written that week. So you're going to have assignments to get certain pages done in a week's time. If you don't get it done, it's not the end of the world. It's just suggested that you get so much done so that you can complete a screenplay in the month that we're doing the class. So it's a 4-week class to do a feature screenplay, and we break it down so it's easy. And it's your first screenplay, it'd be perfect, or your second or your third, just to get it done, because you do need 2 or 3 if you want to become a professional writer and you want to start getting out there and trying to get an agent and making submissions and everything. People will be looking for 3 feature screenplays from you. So you need to get as much practice as possible. But what I'm going to be doing in those classes is 3 classes a week, 3 hours each class, each session, for 4 weeks. And then on Sundays, I'm going to have available hours for each of the students where we're just doing one-on-one time. Basically, kind of how she just broke down her little section there. But it is 4 weeks, 3 times a week, 3 hour sessions 3 times a week for 4 weeks, and then Sundays, private time for like an hour for each person, or 2 hours for each person, depending on how many people we have in the class. We break it down. I want to shoot for 9 people in the class, but we'll see what happens. So I think she's just talking about her class right now. I kind of am interested in what's going on over here. Okay, this is Story Binder, the Pixar storytelling formula and inside look. That's way too much information. In her video essay, explores why tell a story. Perfect.
Pixar sets the standard for 3D animation. They created a new medium for filmmaking and continually raised the bar for artistry and innovation. But Pixar's true success comes from their ability to go beyond the technical and focus on the most important element in film, and that's story. They have 22 rules for great storytelling that they adhere to in all their films. But I want to focus on just one, and that's the why must you tell this story? Why does this story need to exist, and what greater purpose does it serve? Whether it's to teach the virtues of cooperation over pridefulness, coming to terms with the death of a loved one, or pursuing your passion despite your background, all themes and ideas central to socio-emotional development. These aren't superficial love stories or fairy tales. They focus on family and respect, friendship and compassion, things kids should be learning about in their most impressionable years. I grew up on the classic Disney animated films. I loved those movies as a child, and I still do to this day. But even at a young age, I was curious why so many of them focused on love stories, or stories about a young girl giving up everything for a guy that they barely know. In The Little Mermaid, Ariel leaves her kingdom, her family, and gives up her own voice to be with some dude she saw through the water. And there's nothing wrong with stories about an ill-treated girl being swept away by a prince, but they aren't really applicable to younger kids. And it makes sense considering all these stories are adaptations of 100-year-old novels. There's a tendency in animation to oversimplify a message and boil down the central conflict into one megalomaniacal villain, with no real subtlety or context for being evil. Disney films are notorious for making their antagonists fairly paper-thin. Scar has no motivation other than wanting to rule, Gaston is little more than a thug, and even Frozen, which is a great story about sisterhood and independence, has a cliché mustache-twirling villain revealed toward the third act. This isn't by any means bad storytelling. These are all fantastic films, but these characters have so much more potential. In The Incredibles, Syndrome may be evil, but you see that character's arc.
wanted to help, and what did you say to me?
Fly home, buddy. I work alone.
He's layered and you understand his motivation very clearly. And ultimately, it makes him more sympathetic. Even Sid, who arguably isn't even a villain. He's a curious kid who likes to experiment with his toys. Sure, he's a punk, but we all were when we were that age. The real antagonist of Toy Story is Woody. His selfishness and fear of being replaced sets the conflict in motion, and he's challenged with accepting change as a natural part of life. And from an emotional perspective, that's much more relatable than facing your nemesis. Pixar understands that the most important stories resonate with people because they appeal to some core truth about the human condition, regardless of whether those stories are told through the eyes of toys or monsters or robots. They're able to really empathize with their audience, as if to say, we know that you're feeling this way, now let us show you why you're feeling this way. And they do it in a manner that doesn't feel preachy or condescending. They strive to teach emotional understanding. Something I've always admired about Pixar is that for the most part, they tackle subject matter that would only work as a 3D animated film. You can't adapt Toy Story into any other medium, it just doesn't work the same. You couldn't do Cars in live action or Inside Out as a play. Cinderella's been a novel, a film, a cartoon, a play, and a TV series. With Pixar, you're not going to get these stories anywhere else. Look at Finding Nemo. That's a film that took full advantage of a fresh, unique setting and told a story you could only do in the ocean. And now let's look at a similar film, Shark Tale. It came out a year later, and it's just a weird mafia gangster movie with restaurants and car washes, and all the fish are racist stereotypes.
Right on the, snap it. You're not snapping it. Oscar. Oh, hey, don't sweat it. A lot of white fish can't do
It
it.
didn't embrace the medium. Animation has the ability to simplify or exaggerate and abstract or clarify. It's the perfect vehicle for storytelling and character development. It has the capacity to explore truly meaningful subject matter, and it should be more than bright colors and catchy songs. There's this connotation of childishness that comes along with animation because the audience is typically skewed young, and people have a tendency to take the term family film to mean kid-friendly. And that's just not the case with Pixar films. These are stories for everyone, fathers, mothers, teenagers, children, anyone.
I wouldn't get anything out of that. The only thing I got out of that was, the only thing I really got out of that was that Woody was the antagonist of the entire story because it was his selfishness that caused the whole motivation of the story, which is really interesting, to think of your protagonist as the antagonist as well. who's the person who's causing all the conflict in the story. And it usually is your protagonist at the same time. Your protagonist wants something and somebody's standing in the way of it, and they are perceived as the bad guy because we are, we're sympathetic to our character. But if it's everything is motivated by your character's wants, and wants are usually selfish. Needs are usually needs usually tend to take other people into consideration. But I'm gonna have to end it there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will